Welcome to this presentation. My name is Steve Bartlett, Technical Marketing Engineer supporting AOS-CX switching. And as part of the 10.09 software release, we have several usability enhancements that I'm going to tell you about. Welcome again to the agenda then. So we have 9 features identified as usability features as part of the 10.09 release. And we've split the presentations up into 4. So in this particular instance, in this particular presentation, we are going to cover firmware distribution and log buffer notification. That's one of 4. Second of 4 is going to be covering admin access to the log file and locked out users. Those are new features as well. And then 3 or 4, prefer statement on NTP server and the IPv6 RA guard, specifically affecting the 8325, is on 3 or 4. And we shall finish off with some enhancements to some specific show commands. So this is one of 4. So we'll go straight in and run with firmware distribution and log buffer notification. So the first one in our usability list is firmware distribution using the REST API, impacting all switch platforms. So let's have a quick look at that. With the new release of 10.09 software, we can leverage a CX switch as a local image server, supporting any switch with the 10.09 CX software code. So a couple of points to call out. No cross-family image distribution is supported. This means you cannot place a 6300 image on an 8325 switch and distribute to other 6300 switches from the 8325 switch. Makes perfect sense. The code will be rejected as you try and download it onto the 832500 switch in this instance. So there is a simple process to follow. We upgrade the switch firmware to the desired firmware revision level to the flash, and optionally reboot if you want to upgrade that local switch. Then we use that switch image server as a local image distributor. Of course, the switch has to be on the 10.09 code release. So let's have a quick look on how this would work. It's very straightforward. Central triggers an upgrade request for the desired switch. And here we're using an image server to upgrade switch A. Switch A updates its firmware image via the target image server. And then from that point, Central can now leverage the API, an automated process, to use switch A as the distribution server to other switches of the same platform and the same code. The Central functionality, do be aware, is not there quite yet. It's looking to provide the orchestration feature set in the next release of software. It is available, however, on the AOS-CX API as a part of 10.09, which means that potentially you could use your own management tool sets, like for instance Ansible, to program and deliver this feature set now. But at the moment it's not available in Central. The other point to make is not available via the CLI, so you can only do this via the API. So the next feature is log buffer notification, and notify when logs exceed their threshold. So let's have a quick look at this. So in the past, and this has been an ongoing problem for a while, customers have complained that some features fill the partition with logs very, very quickly, to an extent that the older logs have been overwritten with no warning before anyone can actually retrieve them and look at them. So a desired method was seen to be required to ensure that the network administrators has the option of copying log files prior to any overwrite of the log buffer, and ideally notified by an arm-on trap and an event log notification whenever the log buffer size exceeds a defined threshold. So that is a problem statement. So let's have a look at the solution overview, and this is what we have as part of the change. One of the key elements of the change is to generate an event log and the SNMP arm-on trap whenever the log buffer exceeds a specific limit. The other key element is the rotation of the log buffers, which will be covered in one of the slides. The log buffer notification is supported across all the logs, and these are for event, auth, audit, and the security logs, which are applicable just to the 62, 6300, and 6400 platforms. These are new logs, and there is a separate usability topic covering the security logs further on in this presentation. The change impact platforms, well, it's all existing platforms for event, audit, and auth logs, and just the 6200, 63, 6400 for the security logs. So let's have a quick look at the summary of the design. The log buffers are now split into manageable chunks. The size and number of chunks may vary based on the platform. So whenever a chunk is full, it is archived, and a new chunk is created for storing new logs. Archiving of chunks will continue until a new chunk is created, until the max limit for the last chunk number is reached. Then the chunk is then archived and the oldest chunk is deleted. We'll take a look at this in a bit more detail very shortly. So whenever the log buffer is almost full, an event and SNMP trap is raised. Whenever the number of chunks reaches one less than the max limit, this is the default scenario. This then allows users to collect the desired logs before they get rotated, and when some logs will naturally get deleted. So let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. We have a 6300 platform as an example. So each chunk, as you can see in orange, are split into 16 meg units, 1 to 5, and we have the active log. So let's start with the active log, and there is no archive chunks. So we just got the active log. When the active log is full, it's archived to chunk 1, and this will continue until the 5th chunk is reached. Then we have the event log triggered with the SNMP ARM1 trap. And when the max limit is reached in the number of chunks, the oldest chunk is deleted based on the rotation. And we'll look how this works in one of the slides coming up. So this is an example on the 6300 again, and this is what it looks like in the way of thresholds. As you can see, we've got 5 chunks. Chunk 1 consumes 15%, chunk 2 30%, 3 50%, 4 70%. When we get to chunk 5, it's 90%, and then we have the active log. So the default threshold is 90%, which triggers the event log notification and the SNMP trap. And of course, this can be changed, but do be mindful that it should only be changed downwards, as if you increase the default from 90% upwards, you are probably likely to overwrite logs before you get the notification or as you get the notification, negating the benefit of the system change. So this is how it looks in terms of the log threshold rotation. So let's have a look at this in detail. Active log on the right here. So when the active log in grey gets full, and if there is an archive log chunk 1, it is renamed to chunk 2. Then the active log is archived as chunk 1. Chunk 2 then gets renamed to chunk 3, and so on and so forth, all the way up to chunk 5. When we get to chunk 4, that is renamed to chunk 5. And if there is already a chunk 5, it will overwrite the existing chunk if present. Now, note that the audit log has only 2 chunks, and the event auth and security has 5 chunks. Bearing in mind the security is applicable to specific platforms. Just be mindful of that. So to get our logs out, we can retrieve them, but first of all, we need to start the shell from the CLI, and you can see the commands in the PowerPoint. We run the start shell command, then we run the sudo bash command to give us the appropriate privileges in the shell. We change to the /log directory, and this is where we have our archive logs, should they actually be archived. And then we need to run the ipnetns exec swns bash command, and this allows the shell namespace to be aware of the networking commands. And from there, we can then run sftp or even tftp, or SCP, SFTP or SCP being preferred, to extract our logs down into our destination host server. So these are the new commands. They're very straightforward, and you can see them on the PowerPoint. And we use the no log threshold to return to the default value, which is 90%. So a quick summary: all platforms have 6 chunks for the event, auth, and security logs, should they be supporting the security logs. All platforms have 2 chunks for audit logs, and the size of platform chunk will vary depending on the particular platform, as some platforms are more lightweight than others. So these are the platform storage capacities and the flash size and type. The solution is designed so that the solution does not fill up on the storage capacity of the switch flash, as the logs are rotated and of course the oldest ones are overwritten, but they're presented here as a quick reference. So that concludes this session, 1 of 4. Do remember there are 3 others in this series of usability enhancements for 10.09. So do take the time to review the ones that you are interested in and watch the recordings. Thank you for watching.